Hey everyone, this is BRAINWAVEZ, and in this video I'm gonna show you how to create a drop in the style of LSDREAM. This whole project file, as usual, is available on my Patreon along with many others, so feel free to check the link in the description if you want to get it, and let's get started. The BPM for this one is 90. I'm using my favorite kick that I use all the time. It's the Ikali Threads kick, and a cymatics snare, and then some hi-hat that I found somewhere in my hard drive. The drum pattern sound like this. So snare is going every 2 and 4 in here. You can see that I'm skipping the first snare just to build a little bit more of tension. And the hi-hats is just like a pretty simple pattern repeating throughout the whole thing. Then at the very end I have like this little drum break. So pretty straightforward drums. Then for my synths I have a little bit of a call and response pattern in here. So the first section is this one. So that's 3 layers. I'm just gonna start with the first one. I'm using a sine wave in Serum. I created this first LFO going pretty quickly in the rate, and smooth is around 93.4, so that make this shape to be much smoother for everything that I routed to. Then I put a second oscillator 4 octaves up, also a sine wave. I'm doing FM from B, 28%. And I'm routing the LFO to both the level of the first oscillator and the second oscillator. Then I put this filter and I routed the cutoff and the mix to the first LFO. Then I put some distortion in tube mode and some multiband compression. Then I put a lot of post-processing, so I got a saturator sinoid fold mode with these parameters in here. Bringing more the harmonics. Then I put an amp to make it sound heavier, then some overdrive to boost around 4K. Erosion with white noise just to have that nice top end. Then I put wider, some EQ boosting around 705K, and another EQ at the end, just cutting everything below 300 and decreasing some harsh frequencies. So that's the main sound that I created a layer for the low mids just to focus on that part specifically. So the patch itself is just sine wave with a little bit of harmonics in here. I draw the harmonics just by clicking on this pencil and just dragging these little bars up, and a tiny bit of tube distortion. And after that I just decided that this layer should be covering around 80 Hertz and 300 Hertz, and I made a rather big boost around 150. And I put a little bit of erosion just as once again to create a little bit of top end noise. So those two sound like this together. And then I put a sub bass, which it's the same patch as for the low mids, but I'm just cutting everything below 80 hertz and boosting a little bit around like 40 hertz. So that's how those three layers sound together. Then I have some bass fills like this, which are just some samples of mine. This is like a rack that I created. I can make a tutorial about this rack if you guys want me to, just let me know. Then I have like this Neuro bass fill, which this one is 2 saw waves. The first one has 2 voices of unison. I'm playing with the tuning here with this LFO and with this phaser. And I also have phaser filtering here, 24 plus. And the second LFO, it's making the cutoff move. These are the values for that. I have also like a noise generator, 14% of noise. The second oscillator is a saw wave, it's 2 octaves up. There is some FM happening, 14% of FM, and I'm using this third LFO to create this shaping here. To be honest, I don't remember if I created this patch from scratch or if I followed a tutorial to create it, but it's a pretty cool one, so I might just as well share it. But yeah, full disclosure, I'm not fully sure if I created this from scratch or if I followed someone's tutorial about it. Then on the effects I have phaser, and I'm playing with these 2 LFOs and these 2 parameters in here, the depth and the frequency. Feedback phase makes at around 43%, and then I have some distortion, 56 and 69% of dry wet. And what I'm doing is I'm gliding through the notes, so you can see that in here the portamento monolegato, it's enabled, and I have like 123 milliseconds of portamento, so that's helping to create that nice like Neuro sound that you often hear. Then the second time around it changes. I changed the notes a little bit, and yeah, it's just a really nice Neuro bass. So that's for the bass fill in there. Then in the second section, or like the response, I have this other bass. So I started with a sine wave once again, doing FM from B, 27%, harmonic series in the second oscillator, wavetable position 7, 1 octave up, level all the way down on the second oscillator, and on the first one is around 64. That's how that sounds so far. Then I put a reverb filter with these values in here. And on the effects, I put a hyper dimension, phaser, distortion, sine fold, compression, and reverb. Then the trick for this one is I added 2 shifters. I talked about this trick in another video of mine about how to make halftime like a cool customer. So in that video I mentioned adding 2 shifters and putting a macro in the fine and in the dry wet knob and just playing with those 2 parameters. So I did that and I came up with like a nice wob pattern. So if you change this around, it's gonna sound different. So you gotta be careful with fine-tuning that to the right amount to sound good. Then I put some auto pan, phase all the way down and amount around 86. And then just an EQ, muting everything below 300 and boosting around 400, 700 and 6K. Then I just put a sub beneath that. This is just my sub rack, which is you know, just hip hop sub bass with a little bit of post processing like amp and erosion. And I also put like the same LFO effect, just a little bit more subtle, like 33%. And both sound like this together. Then yeah, the second time around I have like a couple extra layers for each section. So in here I added this other layer. You can see that the only thing that I changed in here is just putting the second oscillator 2 octaves up, and then I got rid of a lot of the post-processing and I just stayed with the saturator and I just put an EQ to cut everything below 150. And that was enough to create like a nice layer that complements the first one, the main one. So and then for the layer on the second section, I have the same post-processing, and in the serum patch I just changed the wavetable position and I took out the reverb, and that's pretty much it. Then something that was pretty important is just the placement of the fills. So I tried to create like a nice pattern with the fills in like this type of flow. Something that sounded like a little bit funky and with movement, you know. So yeah, as I mentioned, these are just samples of mine. Lastly, I just have some background elements just to fill out the drop a little bit, like risers, crashes, sweep ups, just basic stuff. So that pretty much covers everything. I hope it was helpful. As I mentioned in the beginning, the whole project file is available on my Patreon, so check the link in the description for that. And also I'm doing one-on-one coaching, so if you want to jump on a Zoom call with me, I also have a link in the description for that. So please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I hope I see you around.